During that time, a Marshall Plan seeded a miracle, and a North Atlantic alliance protected our people. And those in the neighborhoods and nations to the east drew strength from the knowledge that freedom was possible here. In Berlin, that the waves of crackdowns and suppressions might therefore someday be overcome. Today, 60 years after they rose up against oppression, we remember the East German heroes of June 17. When the wall finally came down, it was their dreams that were fulfilled. Their strength and their passion, their enduring example remind us that for all the power of militaries, for all the authority of governments, it is citizens who choose whether to be defined by a wall, or whether to tear it down. And we're now surrounded by the symbols of a Germany reborn. A rebuilt Reichstag and its glistening glass dome. An American embassy back at its historic home on Pariser Platz. And this square itself, once a desolate no man's land, is now open to all. So while I am not the first American president to come to this gate, I am proud to stand on its eastern side to pay tribute to the past. For throughout all this history, the fate of this city came down to a simple question. Will we live free or in chains? Under governments that uphold our universal rights, or regimes that suppress them? In open societies that respect the sanctity of the individual and our free will? Or in closed societies that suffocate the soul? As free peoples, we stated our convictions long ago. As Americans, we believe that all men are created equal with the right to life and liberty. And the pursuit of happiness. And as Germans, you declared in your basic law that the dignity of man is inviolable. Around the world, nations have pledged themselves to a universal declaration of human rights. Which recognizes the inherent dignity and rights of all members of our human family. And this is what was at stake here in Berlin all those years. And because courageous crowds climbed atop that wall, because corrupt dictatorships gave way to new democracies. Because millions across this continent now breathe the fresh air of freedom, we can say, here in Berlin. Here in Europe our values won. Openness won. Tolerance won. And freedom won here in Berlin. And yet, more than 2 decades after that triumph, we must acknowledge that there can at times, be a complacency among our Western democracies. Today, people often come together in places like this to remember history, not to make it. After all, we face no concrete walls, no barbed wire. There are no tanks poised across a border. There are no visits to fallout shelters. And so sometimes there can be a sense that the great challenges have somehow passed. And that brings with it a temptation to turn inward to think of our own pursuits, and not the sweep of history. To believe that we've settled history's accounts, that we can simply enjoy the fruits won by our forebears. But I come here today, Berlin, to say complacency is not the character of great nations. Today's threats are not as stark as they were half a century ago. But the struggle for freedom and security and human dignity, that struggle goes on. And I've come here, to this city of hope. Because the tests of our time demand the same fighting spirit that defined Berlin a half-century ago. Chancellor Merkel mentioned that we mark the anniversary of President John F. Kennedy's stirring defense of freedom, embodied in the people of this great city. His pledge of solidarity. Ich bin ein Berliner echoes through the ages. But that's not all that he said that day. Less remembered is the challenge that he issued to the crowd before him. Let me ask you, he said to those Berliners. Let me ask you to lift your eyes beyond the dangers of today and beyond the freedom of merely the city. Look, he said, to the day of peace with justice, beyond yourselves and ourselves to all mankind. President Kennedy was taken from us less than 6 months after he spoke those words. And like so many who died in those decades of division, he did not live to see Berlin united and free. Instead, he lives forever as a young man in our memory. But his words are timeless because they call upon us to care more about things than just our own self-comfort. About our own city, about our own country. They demand that we embrace the common endeavor of all humanity. And if we lift our eyes, as President Kennedy called us to do, then we'll recognize that our work is not yet done. For we are not only citizens of America or Germany, we are also citizens of the world. And our fates and fortunes are linked like never before. We may no longer live in fear of global annihilation, but so long as nuclear weapons exist, we are not truly safe. We may strike blows against terrorist networks. But if we ignore the instability and intolerance that fuels extremism, our own freedom will eventually be endangered. We may enjoy a standard of living that is the envy of the world. But so long as hundreds of millions endure the agony of an empty stomach or the anguish of unemployment, we're not truly prosperous. I say all this here, in the heart of Europe, because our shared past shows that none of these challenges can be met unless we see ourselves as part of something bigger than our own experience. Our alliance is the foundation of global security. Our trade and our commerce is the engine of our global economy. Our values call upon us to care about the lives of people we will never meet. When Europe and America lead with our hopes instead of our fears. We do things that no other nations can do, no other nations will do. So we have to lift up our eyes today and consider the day of peace with justice that our generation wants for this world. I'd suggest that peace with justice begins with the example we set here at home. For we know from our own histories that intolerance breeds injustice. Whether it's based on race, or religion, gender, or sexual orientation. We are stronger when all our people, no matter who they are or what they look like, are granted opportunity. And when our wives and our daughters have the same opportunities as our husbands and our sons. when we respect the faiths practiced in our churches and synagogues. Our mosques and our temples, we're more secure. When we welcome the immigrant with his talents or her dreams, we are renewed. When we stand up for our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters and treat their love and their rights equally under the law, we defend our own liberty as well. We are more free when all people can pursue their own happiness. And as long as walls exist in our hearts to separate us from those who don't look like us, or think like us, or worship as we do, then we're going to have to work harder, together, to bring those walls of division down. Peace with justice means free enterprise that unleashes the talents and creativity that reside in each of us. In other models, direct economic growth from the top down or relies solely on the resources extracted from the earth. But we believe that real prosperity comes from our most precious resource, our people. And that's why we choose to invest in education and science and research. And now, as we emerge from recession, we must not avert our eyes from the insult of widening inequality. Or the pain of youth who are unemployed. We have to build new ladders of opportunity in our own societies that even as we pursue new trade and investment that fuels growth across the Atlantic. America will stand with Europe as you strengthen your union. And we want to work with you to make sure that every person can enjoy the dignity that comes from work, whether they live in Chicago or Cleveland or Belfast or Berlin, in Athens or Madrid. Everybody deserves opportunity. We have to have economies that are working for all people, not just those at the very top. Peace with justice means extending a hand to those who reach for freedom, wherever they live. Different peoples and cultures will follow their own path. But we must reject the lie that those who live in distant places don't yearn for freedom and self-determination just like we do. That they don't somehow yearn for dignity and rule of law just like we do. We cannot dictate the pace of change in places like the Arab world. But we must reject the excuse that we can do nothing to support it. We cannot shrink from our role of advancing the values we believe in, whether it's supporting Afghans, as they take responsibility for their future, or working for an Israeli-Palestinian peace, or engaging as we've done in Burma to help create space for brave people to emerge from decades of dictatorship. In this century, these are the citizens who long to join the free world. They are who you were. They deserve our support. For they too, in their own way, are citizens of Berlin. And we have to help them every day. Peace with justice means pursuing the security of a world without nuclear weapons, no matter how distant that dream may be. And so, as president, I've strengthened our efforts to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. And reduce the number and role of America's nuclear weapons. Because of the New START Treaty. We're on track to cut American and Russian deployed nuclear warheads to their lowest levels since the 1950s.